Senior officials from the Japanese Prime Minister's office recently told reporters Japan should consider nuclear arms, causing a stir. Though the official said the remarks were personal opinion, it's rare for a Japanese government official to discuss nuclear armament. Today, let's take a closer look at this issue. Let's get right into it. According to a report by the Mainichi Shimbun on December 19th, a senior security official in the Kaji administration highlighted threats from China's nuclear expansion, Russia's nuclear threats, and North Korea's nuclear development to reporters on December 18th. He went on to say that in the end, protecting one's own country ultimately comes down to oneself, and that for security, Japan needs to be armed with nuclear weapons. In Japan, there is something called the three non-nuclear principles. Simply put, the three non-nuclear principles mean that Japan will not produce, possess, or allow the entry of nuclear weapons. This has been maintained ever since it was established in 1967, but now, with remarks that fundamentally challenge this principle coming out, it's causing a stir. There's a lot of criticism in Japan too, isn't there? Nakatani Gen, former Minister of Defense, said the government expects individuals to avoid careless personal remarks. Saito Tetsuo, Komeito Party opposition leader, naturally, when talk of nuclear armament in Japan arose, the country that reacted most sensitively was, of course, China. China strongly protested against the fact that a senior official in the Japanese Prime Minister's office advocated for nuclear armament. Geo Jack Hun, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson, said on December 19 that Japan has repeatedly made inappropriate comments and actions on military and security issues. Some factions in Japan are now moving to acquire nuclear weapons. He said this reveals right-wing conservatives' ambition to revive militarism, escape international constraints, and speed up remilitarization. He also stated that they should stop looking for excuses to expand their military and stop testing the limits of international justice regarding the issue of nuclear possession. In fact, Japan is a country that has almost completed the technological requirements necessary for nuclear armament to the extent that it is classified as a quasi-nuclear state in the international community. What does the concept of a quasi-nuclear state mean? It refers to a country that does not actually possess nuclear weapons, but has the capability to produce them in a very short time if a political decision is made. Currently, Iran, Japan, and Korea are considered in this category. Japan is seen as the country that could become nuclear armed the fastest. Japan has long developed technology for the entire nuclear fuel cycle, citing nuclear power generation as the reason. Japan not only has experience operating reactors that use uranium as fuel, but has also fully secured reprocessing technology to separate spent nuclear fuel and extract plutonium. The reason this reprocessing technology is directly connected to nuclear armament is because plutonium is one of the key materials for nuclear weapons. Japan holds over 44 tons of plutonium domestically and abroad, enough to theoretically produce about 6,000 nuclear warheads. In other words, Japan has the capability to produce nuclear materials, the scientific and technical personnel needed to design nuclear weapons, and even the delivery systems to deploy them in practice. Until now, only political will and readiness to bear the international burden have been lacking. For this reason, experts have consistently assessed that if Japan decides to arm itself with nuclear weapons, it could realize nuclear capability not in years, but within a matter of months. This is why China is highly sensitive to any Japanese statement on nuclear armament. The moment Japan actually acquires nuclear weapons, the strategic balance in Northeast Asia will be fundamentally shaken, and for China, it will no longer be a simple diplomatic issue, but a situation where it must re-establish its entire nuclear deterrence and security strategy. China is reacting sensitively, while the United States views the situation positively. Within the United States, there is a growing atmosphere of positive evaluation regarding Japan's possession of nuclear weapons and its own nuclear armament. In fact, the reason for the mention of nuclear armament in Japan is not because public opinion in the United States has changed, but rather, the United States has consistently viewed Japan's nuclear armament positively. Right away. On November 19th, Foreign Affairs magazine argued that if Canada, Germany, and Japan acquired nuclear weapons, it could stabilize the international order. Since the United States can't realistically protect the whole world with its nuclear umbrella, many think Japan's nuclear armament could help supplement America's deterrence. Since this caused such a stir, Kiaramino Ro, the chief cabinet secretary, quickly said on December 19th that the government is following the three non-nuclear principles and tried to ease concerns. In Japan, discussions continue as the Kaichi administration seeks to alter the three non-nuclear principles. Also, among conservatives in Japan, there are growing arguments that, in a situation where the United States might give up its role as the world's police and withdraw from security in East Asia, Japan must develop its own defense capabilities to counter threats. Of course, among the three non-nuclear principles, Prime Minister Kaichi's stance was to change the clause prohibiting the introduction of nuclear weapons, meaning he wants to allow the deployment of United States nuclear weapons on Japanese territory. There are also reports that the Liberal Democratic Party's Security Policy Committee has ordered a review of the 3 non-nuclear principles, so it seems likely that these principles will change soon. The problem is that since the topic of nuclear armament has come up within Japan, we'll have to wait and see how the situation develops from here. Some analysts think these remarks were deliberate to gauge public opinion on nuclear armament. Kinoshita Chigaya, a Japanese political and social scholar, told the Asahi Shimbun that public support for nuclear armament by top officials could harm the administration, so they likely leak such ideas privately to shift public opinion. Despite this, China is reacting strongly. Several military conflicts with Japan have already occurred over fighter jet radar lock-ons. On December 9th, Chinese and Russian bombers flew near Okinawa Island toward Tokyo, Japan. Some see this as China's warning that they could bomb Tokyo with nuclear-capable bombers. With Russia joining in as well, Japan is facing even greater security threats. They continue live-fire drills and shows of force against Japan. With talk of nuclear armament in Japan, conflicts are expected to intensify. Japan is counting on strong United States support, but American public opinion is increasingly favoring Japan's nuclear armament. But the United States government itself is actually claiming neutrality, isn't it? On December 11, the White House said that despite rising tensions between Japan and China, the United States maintains good relations with both. White House spokesperson Caroline Levy addressed the United States government's stance. President Trump built a strong relationship with Japan's new prime minister, was pleased to meet him, and has spoken with him several times since. On United States-China relations, President Trump has kept a good working relationship with President Xi Jinping, saying it's beneficial for the United States. Does this mean the United States aims to keep a strong United States-Japan alliance while maintaining smooth relations with China for its own interests? But this is a very concerning matter for Japan. With China and Russia increasing military displays, the United States isn't offering support, leaving Japan to face China's threats alone. As a result, Japan seems very concerned, while Korea remains officially cautious and quietly watches developments. Despite controversy over comments from a senior Japanese Prime Minister's office official, the Korean government is avoiding direct evaluation or public criticism. This is seen as a strategic choice to monitor the situation without escalating diplomatic tensions. They are only sharing basic opinions about the Japan-China conflict. And while Japan's discussions about expanding its military might seem like an internal security issue on the surface, in reality, it's directly connected to South Korea's security environment. That's why it's difficult for South Korea to speak out recklessly, but at the same time, it's also hard to completely ignore the situation. If Japan officially brings the discussion of expanding its military to the agenda, there is a high possibility that the military balance in all of Northeast Asia will be shaken, and the impact will inevitably be felt on the Korean peninsula first. Since North Korea already treats its nuclear arms as a given, if Japan seriously considers nuclear weapons, South Korea will face neighbors who either have nukes or base strategies on having them. In this situation, if South Korea publicly expresses a strong opposing view, diplomatic relations with Japan could become rapidly strained. On the other hand, if South Korea appears to tolerate Japan's actions, domestic public opinion and security concerns could both intensify at the same time. For now, South Korea is gathering information via diplomatic and security channels, increasing talks with the United States, and monitoring for policy changes in Japan. On the surface, things may seem quiet, but internally it is highly likely that various scenarios are being reviewed to determine whether Japan's remarks are a one-time incident or a signal of a long-term policy shift. If Japan's discussions on nuclear armament move into a more realistic phase, South Korea could also be forced to make a choice, so the current silence should not be seen as indifference, but rather as a very calculated response. Japan's talk of nuclear armament is stirring controversy. What do you think of the situation? Please leave your thoughts in the comments. That's all for this video. Thank you.